Dadhood. Modern Dadhood Podcast.
All right. Boy, that was nice, huh?
Modern Dadhood, Mark.
Modern Dadhood Podcast.
How's it going, dude?
Terrible. You?
That's a bit of a sensational answer, don't you think?
Yeah, you're right. I'm good. You know what? Life has been screaming by at 1,000,000 miles an hour lately, and I feel like a lot's going on, and getting older every day. You know, trying to enjoy life, be in the moment. I just feel like the moments are going by real fast. You ever feel like that?
I hear you. Heard, brother. Yeah, same here. Let's introduce this podcast.
Fine.
This is Modern Dadhood, an ongoing conversation about the joys, challenges, and general insanity of being a dad in this moment. I'm Adam Flaherty, and I'm a dad to 2 daughters who are 11 and 8, almost 12 and 9, which I'm going to have to get used to saying. Man. And you, my friend?
My name is Mark Checkett, and I'm a dad to 2 boys. They're twins. They're 7.5. They're going to be, hold on, what month are we in? What is this? November?
This is called November.
Hold on. 4 months away from being 8 years old.
Pretty awesome.
Now, I take issue with the way that you said modern dadhood a few minutes ago. Seconds, really. Well, because I think you can now say award-winning modern dadhood. I think you could
Signal Award, 3-time Signal Award-winning modern dadhood.
Not to gloat, you know, but
it's just being honest.
We can say that now.
And you and I had a really fun kind of whirlwind, 48-hour or less jaunt down to New York City, where we met some great people at the Signal Awards
Indeed.
reception. Have some new podcasts to listen to coming out of that.
True.
And reconnected with somebody who I hadn't seen in, 20 plus years.
Very weird that you guys
Jeremy
ran
Westfall.
into each other. Very weird. And for about 14 seconds, we stood right next to Hassan Minhaj, who was there at the awards ceremony as well, which was pretty cool. Didn't talk to him, but, well, you know, who needs that, you know?
Had some laughs, ate some good pizza. It was a great trip.
Did not go to Katz's Delicatessen because the line was stupid long. But other than that, it was a great trip. Great trip.
I want to say for folks listening, if this is your first time hearing Modern Dadhood, welcome. We hope you enjoy it. For those who've been listening for a long time, thanks for sticking with us. I know it's been a little bit of a stretch where we haven't had new episodes in the cadence that we usually like to deliver them. And it's because we have been really pushing hard with the podcast Death and that we're producing with former guest Victor M. Sweeney, a mortician. And I would highly recommend that you check out Death and with Victor M. Sweeney, wherever you listen to podcasts or on YouTube. His YouTube channel is blowing up and it's been a lot of fun. But I am psyched for today's episode of Modern Dadhood, Mark, because we've been trying to schedule with this guest. His name's Thom Gibson for a while now. And because we've been so busy, we've had to move it around a little bit. And but he's a great dude. Thom is developing this great program called Work From Home Dads.
Listen, let's not waste any more time. Why don't we get right into our interview with Thom Gibson? Thoughts?
I agree. And Thom is actually in the waiting room right now. So let's do this.
Thom Gibson is a social media strategist, a dad of 2 young kids, the founder of Work From Home Dads, which is a newsletter and blog that is packed with valuable tips on productivity, health, and parenting, specifically for dads who work from home. Thom, welcome to Modern Dadhood.
It's good to be here, Mark. And Adam.
We're glad to have you. So we one of the things that we didn't chat about when we connected briefly earlier before the recording was actually talking about your family. So you do have 2 young kids. That's correct?
Yeah, I've got a 5-year-old Audrey and a 3-year-old son named Thomas. So in the thick of it.
Yeah,
Yes, you are. Yeah. What are they? What are they into right now? What's
Well,
hot at the Gibson house?
Audrey loves to read, which is great. So she's just looking for all sorts of opportunities to read. And she loves Lego type things. And there's this weird little cheapo $1 Lego type thing we get at Target that are these really small ones. And I was just looking at what she made. She made these really intricate designs and was following a pattern with all these different colors. And I was telling my wife afterwards, after Audrey went to bed, I was like, this is actually this is pretty good.
That's great.
Thomas, just like many little boys his age, is just into trucks, all things trucks, excavators, fire trucks, ambulances, like school buses, any big vehicle, dump trucks, all things trucks is his jam right now. So that's what we're into over in the Gibson household.
Nice.
That's awesome. I have two boys. They're 7.5 now, but man, for a long time, it was just all trucks all the time. And actually, we just were cleaning their bedroom out, and we built them loft beds this weekend, which is a big change in the Sheckett household. But we resurfaced Goodnight Construction Site. Have you come across that book? It's one of the board books.
That is one of the evening reads.
Yeah, it took me right back to that same age. I love that book.
Yeah, it's interesting. Even at 5 and 3, there's books that we used to read to them when Audrey was 2 and 3 and Thomas was 1 year. I'm Llama Llama Nighty Night. This was every night for 2.5 years, and now neither of them really cares about that book. So
that's funny.
Yeah, so even a few years in, you get nostalgic over last year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, totally. Yeah. We've had the honor of having a few authors of well-known children's books over the years, and it's really fun to talk to them about the process of writing those books and sometimes illustrating those books and the impact that they've had on, so many millions of people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool. So you had reached out, I think maybe through LinkedIn, and I was pretty intrigued by your story. So you went from having been a middle school teacher for many years to kind of becoming an entrepreneur out of necessity, right? And then now you're building several businesses or projects at the same time. I wonder if you could just share some of that with our listeners, because I think it's a pretty intriguing story.
Sure. Yeah, I was teaching middle school math and robotics for 10 years. And I thought I was going to be teaching forever. While I was a teacher, I didn't study education in college, but I studied audio engineering. So that was kind of what when I noticed, when I saw y'all's podcast and your podcast trailers, I was like, these guys know a thing or two about audio engineering here. I didn't want to end up going to study and work in a music studio. So I went into teaching. But while I was teaching, I kind of found a creative outlet in creating YouTube videos. And I was creating YouTube videos for teachers on how to build a positive classroom culture, classroom management strategies, how I was teaching math, how I was teaching robotics. I started a newsletter. I started making online courses, and I was just this is fun. This is cool. I'm going to be a teacher. I'm going to, making this content stuff actually makes me a better teacher, because there was a season where I was just making videos every week, and I was I don't have anything interesting to film at school this week. So now I need to go find something interesting to do, in my class with my students, whether it was math or robotics or whatever it was. And then I became a dad 2 weeks before the pandemic. And so it was kind of an interesting experience to everything feels so different, but it's how much of this is everything's different because I'm a dad now, and everything is different because the world is on fire, because it was happening at the same time. And, I became, a work from home dad at the same time. I started working from home the same time I became a dad, because my school that I was teaching at we went remote like everybody else. And even when I went back in the fall, it was fully remote. And then we started to slowly make our way back into school. And when my daughter was about 18 months old, me and my wife we were originally planning on putting her in daycare, but it was still the height of the pandemic, and we didn't feel great about putting her in daycare. But at the same time, I was like, I don't want to be a stay-at-home dad though. I love working and doing something and like achieving something. And I've developed such a great reputation and excelled as an educator. I was a 2-time teacher of the year. I felt like, work is where I went and like was respected and liked by my colleagues and my students and the parents of the students. And I wanted to build this business around teaching. And if I left teaching, would it make sense to build like a teaching business? And so much of my like identity was like wrapped up in teaching, and so I was like, I don't know if I can leave this though, but we don't want to put Audrey in daycare either. And my wife is a pediatrician, and we financially just couldn't swing her staying home, even though she wanted to. And so that summer before I was getting ready to go back, I had taken on a few opportunities where I was working remote, and I had joined I was collaborating with a guy and his brother, this startup that they were building called New Ed Tech Classroom, and they were training teachers on how to leverage technology in the classroom, and they were doing YouTube videos and online courses. And Sam, the co-founder, he had found a lot more financial success than I had with my teaching courses and all sorts of stuff. And so I was like, well, maybe what if I like step back from teaching and just went all in on this startup? I'd be able to work from home. I'd be able to be with my daughter. I'd be able to, my wife would, feel at ease knowing like, we're not, just sending Audrey to school before we're ready to send her. And that's what I did. And it was funny because I was so dead set. I'm like, we'll make it work. I'm just going to go back to work and we'll make it happen. But it wasn't until I wrote out like every possible scenario. I was like, what if I did this? And what if I did this? And what's the likely scenario? And what's the worst case scenario? And what's the best case scenario? And then seeing it, I was like, I've wanted to do this creator thing and this business thing for some time. And like, maybe this is my chance to go all in. And it really helped that Audrey like slept 3 hours a day, like clockwork, 12 to 3, so I'd wake up really early and work, and I could work in the afternoon while my wife would go to work and watch Audrey when she got home. And so I decided the fall of 2021, that I wasn't going to go back to teaching. I was going to do the startup, and we worked really hard, and I was able to be and provide for my family financially. I was able to at least match what I was making teaching. It wasn't we were hoping for more money when we were venturing into the business, and eventually we did run out of money. I was able to transition into a marketing role, though, given the experience that I had as, I was the creative director of the startup, and just doing so much with YouTube and social media and email newsletter marketing. I was able to join another tech company as their social media strategist. And I've been doing that for the last 3 years, left that tech company and now work for a cybersecurity company. But years of just kind of creating content online and led to the opportunities to be able to work from home. And now, like being a dad, working from home since, the pandemic days, like many dads were at the time, I wanted to build something where I could share what was working, because I talked to a lot of dads that work from home, and one of the biggest struggles is like creating those boundaries. And like, I try to work, but I'm also like kind of around the family, and,
right.
I'm not getting a lot of work done, but then I'm also not present with the family, and I don't feel like I'm doing either of them. I feel like I'm doing both things poorly, and so I wanted to just share things that at least worked for me and my experiences and the different things that I'm experimenting with and trying. And this worked for a season, but then the kids got older, and so it stopped working. We started doing this instead, and those kinds of things. And I also get to talk about like, home office equipment, and like cameras and microphones and productivity and marriage and fatherhood, all mixed in one. And so that's kind of what led to starting the work from home dads business on the side.
Yeah. And for people who do work from home, it's like all of those things that you just described, like really can very easily blend together. When you don't have the separation or the boundaries of like, I leave my house at 7 or 8 a.m. and I come back at 4 or 5.
Yeah.
So especially when your daughter was really young, it wasn't just like the decision out of necessity that you were going to be working from home because your wife needed to work. It was like you were going to be working from home and balancing that with being a primary caretaker. So like, what was that? I mean, I'm assuming those early, months or years are when you were able to develop a lot of this framework that you're now teaching. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, I found that not having a routine was pretty terrible, and I found that trying to work and parent half-heartedly at the same time was also pretty terrible. So I developed a schedule at the time where I would get up pretty early, and I would just kind of chat with my wife. It's like, hey, she would leave for work at 7:30. So I'm like, hey, if Audrey gets up before 7:30, would you mind watching her so I could just kind of get some solid work time? And I would work 5:30 to 7:30. And then once my little wife left for work, it was me and Audrey time. Like there was like a season where it kind of felt like Groundhog Day. We did the same thing every day, but it was great. It was fun. I enjoyed it. She enjoyed it. We would just go on a 5-mile run usually around the neighborhood together, which is something that I tell a lot of dads are like, I don't know where to find time to exercise. I'm like, well, is there ways that you can like exercise like with your kids, like go on a walk with them or push them in the stroller or do like little workouts and stuff. And so that's how I was kind of like finding that time for that. And then we would go to the park and she would just play. And then we would have lunch and then I'd put her down for a nap at 12. And then, once 3 o'clock came, it was like me and Audrey. And, we would just hang out until my wife came. And some days I would keep working when my wife got home, or if she had a long day, like I would be like, oh, don't worry. It's like, I'll watch Audrey if you just need to like decompress. And so like, for me, it was like having those really dedicated times and time blocks that I'd be like, these are the times that I'm working on, and being in communication with my wife about when those time blocks were. Because if it was like, whenever I'm working, kind of working, if it's, I hear a lot of dads who work from home, they don't have that conversation with their partner. And so their partner is like asking like, hey, would you mind helping out with this thing in the middle of their work time, and it feels like, oh, you're here, so could you help, but like saying like, okay, this, in order for me to really get my work done quickly and efficiently so I can help, I need to have like that undistracted time. And I also want to give you your time for yourself, regardless if their partner is working or isn't working outside of the home. Like having that be a two-way conversation of like, this is what I need for my work, and what do you need, and how can I provide that for you, and when can I watch the kids, so that way you can get a little bit of time to yourself. And so that's been one of the biggest things, is like having those times and being in agreement with my wife on those times has been huge. And then I tried, eventually, she started going to a Montessori school. And so she was going for a good part of the middle of the day, and that was usually my work time. And then my son was born, and I was like, all right, I'll just do the same thing with him. And then he won't go to school until he's probably 2.5. And like, he was not the rock solid sleeper that my daughter was.
Oh, man.
And so I wasn't able to work as much. But I was also working from home. Audrey was like 18 months by the time I was working from home. So she was a little bit older, a little bit more mobile. He was still like that super small baby phase where, like if I could have a meeting and be holding him, and it wasn't a big deal. Like there was literally a time where I was like, oh man, he just made a mess in his pants. And so I put my camera on. I had my laptop and I was on the floor with him, but I turned off my camera and I turned off my microphone, and I went over to go change him. I'm listening to the meeting while I'm changing him, and they're like, well, Tom, you had something on the agenda. What was it that you wanted to say? I'm like, oh shoot. And like I turned the camera and I turned the mic on, and they see like, me from the neck up, and I'm clearly like changing like a child. Like, well, I was thinking with our YouTube strategy, like something that we could really do is like try to build a little bit more intrigue, and then I'm gonna, and then like, I don't think any of them heard a single thing I said. And like my colleague was just like, can we just appreciate that Tom just like gave us a YouTube strategy while like changing his son's diaper? and that wasn't like a long-term like strategy, but it was like a small season where he was like small enough where, I could have those meetings. He wasn't going to crawl away, and he was just sitting there, and I can give him a bottle and stuff. So it kind of shifted as we went through different seasons with the kids being different ages. And, now they're both, my son is in an early childhood Montessori program, and my daughter's now in kindergarten. But, from the beginning, I would say those two things is like defining those work times and being aligned with my wife were some of the highest leverage things that allowed me to be able to get work done and take care of my daughter and my family.
One of the questions that I had was like, what do you think like some are the biggest pitfalls that folks should maybe watch out for if they're only now just starting to work from home, like if someone's listening and they're just beginning like a work from home journey, or if they've been for quite a while, because some of us have been for quite a while and maybe now they're sort of in a bad routine, which I think is probably pretty common. But what are some things you think people should look out for or should try to do to make adjustments to sort of help ease into a good routine?
I got an email this week from a dad who's been working from home for some time. He's got some young kids and they're home most of the day, and his wife takes care of them. And he shared with me that he works at the kitchen table because he feels like, since I'm working from home, I'd like to be present and around the family and enjoy the benefits of working from home. But he was like verbatim kind of what I shared earlier. He was just like, I start getting into some work and then the kids come up to me and I'm not happy about it, but I get really irritated and frustrated and snap at them because they're kind of interrupting my work, and then my work is suffering, and then my relationship with my family is suffering. And I asked him, I was like, because he said he did have an office, but then they had their third kid and then he lost that office and, got regulated to the kitchen table. But I asked him, like, is there a place, that you can have that you could say, like, this is my workspace? If you're unable to have an office. And he's like, actually, like there is, it's the attic and it needs to be cleaned out, but I think it could be like that space. And I want to come up with a plan to just like slowly just start cleaning it up so that way I can actually create that separation, because I think it's so hard to visibly be available, visibly be there, but be unavailable. Like it's hard. Yeah. It's hard for our wives, our partners to see that and understand that and feel like, oh wait, he's working, even if he's got the headphones on, and that's the cue that if you put the headphones on, I'm in a meeting and I'm locked in, but if you're visibly there, it is so hard to not feel you're available, and like no chance that a child is going to understand that. And so like I think having that separation to whatever capacity that looks like, and I know some dads like they have remote jobs, but they know like there's no way I'm getting work done at home, and so they go and work at a coffee house, or they go and work at a co-working station, so that way they can have like a commute and have like an office and a place that they go to. That's not the house. And so I would say that, and it also helps just like yourself, like this is my workspace and I'm entering a work mindset versus like I'm doing work on the couch, or I'm doing work at the same place that I watch TV, or I'm doing work the same place that I, have meals with the family. And like, there's all this like context switching, but having that dedicated space, I would say, is one of the number one things. And I would say just don't make yourself so available. This is not exclusive to people who work from home, because all of us have devices in our pockets that make us available. But I have had to delete Slack from my phone because like, even when I'm like off work and I'm like, oh, now I'm not working in the office anymore. I've turned off my work for the day, and I'm sitting on the floor and I'm playing with my kids, and then they start playing with each other, and I'm like, I've got a free second. Let me just see what's going on in Slack, and it makes me feel like I'm staying on top of things, and like let me just see what's there. But then something comes in, and I'm like, oh wait, I got to get back to that, and hold on, let me make sure I mark this as unread so that I don't forget about it. But now the kids are like jumping on my back, and I'm like, stop! I'm trying to like fix it. I'm trying to make sure this is unread. Otherwise, I need to get back to this. And now I'm getting agitated with them. And it's like, I've now broken that own boundary for myself, So I think if you've got Slack, if it is in your control whatsoever, I know some roles demand you to be kind of a little bit more on call, but adjust your notification settings or something. But like, I would say delete Slack from your phone. Delete email from your phone. You're going to check it multiple times a day on your computer as it is. And it's just not worth the risk. Or I recently got one of those brick devices where you can basically, most of the time, like I've tried to lock me out after an hour, being on social media. But then it's like, are you sure you want to stay? I'm like, no, let me in. The built-in default Apple one, you could just blow through easily. But brick is actually a physical device. It's magnetic, so you can just put it somewhere where you can say, okay, whenever I brick my phone, I don't want access to these apps. And you can't like bypass it either. You have to actually like take your phone and then go up to the physical brick device and like unlock it. So I've been doing that because like I work in social media. So I do have like all the apps on my phone. And so like I brick it and then I'm upstairs and I'm like, okay, do I really want to go downstairs, go to the fridge, unbrick my phone just so I can open up Twitter or just so I can open up LinkedIn while I told myself that I was going to play with my kids at this time or be present with the family. So those are some of the things that have been supremely helpful and helping me begin to maintain and establish those boundaries between work and home.
You made a couple great points there that are actually kind of a great segue into a question that I had, which is about, so like one of the things that those of us who do work from home, either full-time or part-time, is like facing some feelings of isolation. And I know that for me, like I'm very productive when I don't have those interruptions and notifications. Like if I'm editing video and I can be heads down working from home as opposed to an office where there's lots of distractions and interruptions, like I get a lot done and I'm much more efficient. But I also do miss that like social interaction that comes with going into an office. And, you know, I don't want to be in Zoom meetings all day, but like interacting with other, you know, adults who are not your partner and not in your family. What suggestions do you have for dads who might work from home and feel really isolated?
Yeah, last week I got invited by one of my former colleagues at the school that I used to teach at, and she said, "Hey, a bunch of former teachers of the school, we're going to have a happy hour. You should join us." I was like, "I would love that," and I went, and it was just like so many of my colleagues from like 2016, 2017, 2018, and the school was like in downtown Austin, so it was kind of common for us to sometimes like on a Friday afternoon just go down to like, you know, a happy hour and just hang out as colleagues. And I went and it filled my cup so much. And I was like, oh man, this just feels like a blast from the past. This feels like 2017 hanging out with like my colleagues again. And I came home and like my wife was like, did like going to that like make you miss teaching or anything? And I was like, no, but it made me miss like going to work and having people to hang out with.
Yeah.
And I have to actively make that time now. One of the things that I do in preparation for my week is create something I call the weekly map. And in large part, it's kind of like figuring out like what are my top priorities with my work tasks. But before I even get to like prioritizing my work tasks, I think through like, okay, when am I going to try to find time with people this week? For me, I usually have like, when my wife was working a different schedule for a season, she had Fridays off, and every Friday morning, I would actually go get coffee with a group of guys from my church and my Bible study, and we would just meet and we would talk about like, hey, what are great things going on in your life? What's been a struggle this week? You know, we would pray for each other. And I look forward to that every week, just coffee, tacos, and just, you know, being with brotherhood, you know, and that was very, very important to me and very vital to my own, you know, mental well-being and social well-being. And her schedule changed, and it didn't end up being able to have those Friday mornings because I would be taking one of our kids to school. And so now, like, I just look at my calendar since I don't have a recurring, like, everyone's already got it on the calendar for Friday morning kind of thing. I just think through, like, okay, either Wednesday morning or Wednesday midday is typically my day that I've got the margin to get coffee with somebody or to get lunch with somebody. And so a lot of times I'll just like think through like who's someone that I, you know, haven't gotten a chance to connect with in some time that I would love to hear how things are going, you know. And this was particularly really ramped this up, you know, earlier this year. I got laid off from one of my roles and had like 4 months where I was off, and I was like, I need this now more than ever. I definitely don't want to be like isolated and at home, you know, while I'm like unemployed and just like, you know, thinking like looking for a job like 9 hours a day is like going to move the needle when it's not. I need to be around people. And so that's generally my practice. And, you know, for me, I also think through like when I'm going to go to, I like to do jujitsu. think through like what days of the week or times of the week that I'm going to go to the jiu-jitsu class. And I like going on Tuesday in the middle of the day. And if I don't have meetings, that's when I'm going to go, or maybe Saturday morning or Tuesday night. And that's like another way of just like being around like other people. And like that one also doubles as like exercise and fitness, and so, and like I'm learning how to defend myself. So it's like, it covers a lot of bases, but I would say for other dads, like find ways to, even though it feels weird for whatever reason, for guys sometimes to just reach out and say like, hey, if you're not busy, would love to get some coffee this week and just see how things are going with you and the family. And I know it's not a common thing for a lot of people to do, a lot of dads do, a lot of older men to do in general. Yeah. And so be willing to make the first move, being willing to be the guy that invites people, and be willing to be that guy over and over again, even if it doesn't feel like it's being reciprocated. Like, why am I the one that's always inviting people and no one's inviting me? Like, just make the effort. And even if you've got space in your community, just try to be outside more. I go on a walk, and it's so easy, to give the nod and just keep walking, but just like stop, say hello, one guy I met, and both of us started taking our kids. There's not like a playground in our neighborhood. And so, but there was this one little cul-de-sac that, the kids can kind of like ride their bikes around there. And so we started hanging out there, and like we started texting each other. It's like, hey, I'm headed to the cul-de-sac, and like on a Tuesday afternoon at like 4:00. And we started bringing chairs out there. And like, he even told me, he's like, man, where do you make friends? Like, I'd love to have some friends, and it's like, I feel like that is just so many men. He doesn't work from home and he owns his own business and everything, but I think that's just so many men that just, it's so difficult to make friends. And then you just amplify all of that in the sense that you're at home and you're isolated. And so like, it takes initiative. It takes like going out on a limb, particularly if you're more of an introverted person. Like, you're not going 3 times a week, but like you need to, we are not meant to be isolated. We're not meant to be outside of some kind of community. So whether it's a church, whether it's a gym, whether it's walking around your neighborhood, whether it's just, phoning a friend you haven't talked to in a while, going to meet coffee, you have to make the effort, and you have to plan for it, and you have to schedule it in. Otherwise it's not going to happen. Yeah.
Man, it's such a good reminder too. Like I am kind of the sort of person who will sort of reach out and go, like, I don't really have an issue doing that personally, but I'm also the kind of person who can get heads down and kind of forget to do that. And all of a sudden weeks have gone by, or a couple months. Like I'm getting drinks with a couple of friends, and it's been 4 months or something since like the last time we've all been together. And that's a real bummer, and it does take the reminder once in a while. And I love the idea of just making it a part of your schedule making process, to actually work in time for yourself and for friends. I just love that so much. You developed something that's called the 6-hour Workday Playbook for work from home dads. I wonder if you can just give our listeners like a little bit of insight into what's included in something like that.
Yeah, I find that a lot of, I don't know if you guys have heard the term Parkinson's law, but it's this idea that the amount of time that you give yourself to complete a task or a series of tasks, you will typically fill that amount of time. Yeah. So if you give yourself all day to do something, it's going to take all day because there's no sense of urgency. But if you give yourself like, oh, I'm going to give myself 8 hours or 7 hours or 6 hours to complete this amount of work or this task, a lot of times that same amount of work can be completed if you constrain the amount of time that you give yourself. And so I found just to the things that we discussed at the beginning of the conversation was like, when I knew that the only time that I had to work on my business or in my role when I moved to the tech company was like these 2 hours in the morning, these 3 hours in the afternoon, and maybe one more hour after that, like it focused my energy because I didn't have all day just to be like, I'll get to it. And when you don't create that sense of urgency. And so the idea around the 6-hour playbook, and I said 6 hours, but I think it's just like, saving yourself at least 2 hours a day. I talk to some dads who work from home and they're working 9 and 10 hours days. And so maybe for them, an 8-hour day is the aspiration, and maybe a 6-hour day is unattainable given what their responsibilities are. But the whole premise of the playbook, it's giving you a system and a way of going through first, like taking inventory of where your time is going. I've used a few apps that make that super easy, but there's also like just simple spreadsheet methods that you can do for that. There's a section that walks through the time freedom framework where you are thinking through what you can automate, what you can eliminate, what you can delegate, and what you can renegotiate. So if you've read any of Tim Ferriss's books, that may sound familiar. That last one, renegotiate, was one that I added in there because I was talking to another dad and he's like, I don't know, is like a 6-hour workday like feasible for me? I'm on at least 6 hours worth of calls given my role. And I was like, maybe not, but maybe you could renegotiate some of those calls. Maybe those calls that you're having every week could be every 2 weeks. Maybe the 60-minute meetings that you're having could be 30-minute meetings. Maybe the 30-minute meetings could be 25-minute meetings. Maybe you're in meetings that you don't actually have to be in and you just keep going because you've always just gone. And you said, like just approaching those types of conversations. And I talk about that in the playbook, but that's like you're finding ways that you can save time and shave back some hours by automating, eliminating, delegating, and renegotiating. There's a section on there on like what my conversation with my wife looks like every Sunday whenever we're planning for the week. So that way we are aligned. And it's like, I just got this appointment. Were you going to take off work for that? Or am I going to, I'm going to take her. Okay. So I'll go ahead and pick up the kids on Wednesday. So you can go, so it's like, while we have a normal schedule that we've agreed on, like every week has its own different nuances. And so we talk about that because the worst thing that can happen is we both go into the week with different expectations, and then neither of those expectations are met, which leads to frustration, which leads to resentment, which leads to conflict. And so the playbook gets into some of that. And I also walk through what I mentioned, like with the weekly map, how I not only like make time for friends and for fitness, but like how I actually systematically go through all of the different tasks and prioritize what I need to work on in the week and get it down on paper or in an app or whatever, because I think a lot of guys, like, they enter the week with a vague idea of what needs to get done, but then they turn into reactive mode. And most of the week, they're just reacting to things coming their way. And then they get to the end of the week and they're like, what did I actually get done? What did I move the needle on this week? If you create that weekly map and you actually say, these are my top priorities, these are my medium, these are my low, and these are all the meetings I have to go to. It's like a system kind of go through that all the way down to like, how do I actually plan my day? And honestly, it's like, it's a note card. Like, I'm holding it up for the audio listeners right now. It's literally just like a note card, and it's got a couple little check boxes and the things that I'm going to do. I had a meeting heavy day, so I only put 2 things on there. If you got 6 meetings, don't plan your day like you have 0 meetings. So you're not going to have enough time. Right. And so I actually physically write down what are the 2 or 3 things that I want to get done that day that I pull from my weekly map. And I love having the note card there keeps me from jumping back into the overwhelming massive list of all the things that I need to do and be like, oh, there's so many things I don't want to do it. So the playbook, it's an email series over the course of 5 days. I'm going to send you a new aspect of the playbook to your email. It's absolutely free. I link to and share a bunch of resources in there that will hopefully help dads that are trying to save 10 hours a week, so that way they can have more time for themselves, for their fitness, for their friends, for their family, for their kids, for their passion projects and side projects that they've been putting off for far too long. And that is the playbook and the intent behind it.
Well, the idea of a 6-hour workday, I'm sure, is appealing for a lot of people. Probably appealing for everybody, to think of having more free time. But I also know that for some of us, not everybody who works from home is an entrepreneur or running their own business. But for those who are, I also tend to think like, well, the more hours I put in, the more money I'm going to make, because the faster I can move on to other projects and so forth. But what I'm hearing from you, Thom, is just being purposeful with blocking out time for the things that matter to you, whether it's the social interactions with other people, whether it's movement, exercise, whether it's even getting more sleep, prioritizing getting your sleep and saying, I'm going to be in bed at 9:00 rather than 10:30 or 11. And then actually sticking to those things, committing to those things that you're blocking off on your calendar. Is that fair?
Yeah, and one of my favorite entrepreneurs and creators out there is a guy named Jay Klaus, and he just recently posted. He's got, I think his daughter is maybe about a year old, and he just posted how it's like, having a child has really just forced him to rethink and reprioritize what he was working on, because before the kid, he could just keep grinding, just grind harder. I said I was going to do this, and this, and I'm going to make sure that these things happen for the sake of the business. But like having this new constraint of like, he doesn't want to work all day. He wants to spend time with his daughter and his wife. It forced him to be like, okay, well, what are the highest leverage things that I need to be focusing on in my limited time? And so I think that's what that limiting function of like giving yourself those limits, it forces you to reprioritize. It forces you to think about like, what's the 20% with the Pareto principle? What's the 20% of things that I can really focus on that's going to project 80% of the results that I'm looking for? And it's hard to know what that 20% is sometimes. But I hear more and more from just, I'm not, a full-time entrepreneur myself. I'm building work from home dads in conjunction to a full-time job. But, even from the people that are doing it full-time, it's like, I'm actually more productive in some weird way now that I do have kids, because I have to prioritize and execute in these smaller windows of time.
Well, for listeners who are interested in checking out the 6-Hour Workday Playbook, which I highly recommend, go to wfhdads.com/playbook, where you can access that for free. There's a lot of great resources, and we're going to link to all of Thom's work and social platforms in the episode notes. Thom, thanks so much. I'm excited that we finally connected. It's been a while in the making. We made it happen, and really look forward to staying in touch and following along with your success with Work From Home Dads too.
Yeah, it was my pleasure. I really appreciate it, Adam, Mark, and just giving me the opportunity to come and chat with you guys and chat with your audience.
Thanks, Thom. Boy, what a great interview that was.
I like that guy, Thom Gibson. I have a feeling we'll be staying in touch.
One can only hope.
Hey.
Yeah?
We're at the part of the episode where sometimes there's a recurring segment, and I'm led to believe that you might have something at the ready.
Who led you to believe that? Yes, I have did I just say that out loud? Which is, we've been doing this for a long time, this segment. But as parents, we find ourselves sometimes suddenly engaged in conversation, saying things that, if you could be hovering above the scenario, above the scene as it's playing out, would sort of stick out to you like, wow, am I really saying this right now? Is this the conversation I'm having? Are these the words I'm saying? Sometimes they come out real quick. Sometimes it's more of a long-term sort of lingering, wow, this is a wild conversation. But this evening, post-bath, I walked into my kid's bedroom right there. I said the sentence, "Hey, how's it going with your penis there?"
Always something with those boys and their ding-dongs.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot of penis talk in the Checkit household, I guess. Well, there's a lot of penises here, now. But yeah, I mean, it's well, we've had this conversation. It's an interesting appendage. It gets your attention from time to time. There's a lot to check out, but it was right after bath.
There's a lot to
check out down there. And it was just right after bath, and one kid was still over in the other bath, and when I walked in, one of my kids was just sitting there. He's just totally naked on the floor, sitting crisscross applesauce, and just kind of both hands down there, just poking, pulling, pushing, squeezing.
Examining the stuff, yeah.
Just full on examination mode. So I just stood there for like a second and then just blurted that out. And then we had a whole conversation about penises.
Peni, right?
Sorry, peni.
Maybe this episode is a great one to resurface the musical single that you released a few years back.
Not a bad idea.
Called, if I remember correctly, it was called Oops, Penis Out.
That's the one. That's it. Yeah, let's bring that back. I like that idea. Oops, penis out. Oops, penis out. Oops, penis out.
Well, I think that brings us to the end, the closing credits. Listeners, you can find Modern Dadhood wherever you listen. Please do subscribe and leave us a rating and a review. That helps other people to know that this is something worth checking out. ModernDadhood.com is where kind of our home base is. All of our episodes live there. You can search by guest or by topic. You can also buy a Modern Dadhood t-shirt or a dad hoodie. Have it shipped right to your home.
And you totally should, because the holidays are approaching.
And if you buy it as a gift for somebody or buy it for yourself, you're going to get a free sticker, a free Modern Dadhood sticker with your order.
That's great. Why wouldn't you?
How about all those social media platforms, Mark? They'll all be linked in the show notes, but you want to tell people where they can find us socially?
You got Instagram, you got Facebook, you got TikTok. You got YouTube, and for the business people out there, LinkedIn.
Thank you, as always, to Casper Baby Pants and Spencer Albee for the music in Modern Dadhood, our theme music, and all the nice little stings that bring us from section to section of this show. Thank you to our new friend Thom Gibson for joining us. Highly recommend you check out what he's doing using the links in the episode notes. And Mark Andrew Checkett, please take it away.
Thank you for listening.
Podcast. Just a modern.